So if you saw my video the other day regarding the playground incident, you probably saw that I was letting myself be a little vulnerable, a little open to attack, if you will, by some of the things I might have said that you may have found offensive. And if you didn't watch the video, it's one full video ago. If you got 25 minutes of time, do you want to watch that? See, there are a lot of people who don't have to worry about people uncovering their past. I'm not one of those people. And there's something that happened a long time ago with me in college where I was involved in a situation where I was genuinely terrified. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it together as I talk about this. All right. I've been a Christian for many years, but whenever I got to college, I went through a really bad breakup. I kind of forgot about my values through just being surrounded by people who were just constantly assuring me that, being a degenerate was okay. I mean, the responsibility doesn't lie with them. The responsibility lies with me. But being around godless people, not putting myself around fellow believers, people with a moral walk in life, devil is out there. And he will get to you. Sorry, that's such a long preamble to what is a pretty simple story, but I'm not trying to make excuses for myself for what happened, but it did. And I need the world to know, because I don't want to see what almost happened to me, just be treated like some joke. So here's what happens. It's October. It's Halloween. I don't remember exactly what year. It was somewhere between like 2005 to 2006, somewhere in there, right? I've lost a lot of memories just because of a weird brain disease I had a while back. That's a story for a different day, right? It's Halloween, and anyone who's gone to college on Halloween knows things can get pretty crazy. Girls are dressed a certain way. People are willing to do some things, push some boundaries. I'm surprised more babies aren't born in July because of Halloween, right? At the time, I was sexually active. I was very sexually active, to the point where I would oftentimes find myself getting back from a tryst and getting a message for another one. It really was that casual and that simple. I don't know if this is because I was older, I was more bold, whatever, but that was the way it was for me. This isn't me bragging either. This isn't like, oh yeah, Rick was a playa in college. No, I just was bold. I'd be upfront about what I wanted in a non-Christian way. It was a hookup culture, right? So Halloween, I get blackout drunk, right? I remember vague details of that night. I remember this one girl getting upset about my costume, which if I sort of talk about the costume, I'm going to go off on a weird tangent, but I'll just say my costume I wore that night would never fly today. It barely flew back then, but I was always one of those people who was like saying offensive things, trying to push boundaries, right? Still am to some extent, just like, but within the framework of being, very dedicated to being a Christian and a better Christian every day, not without my fault. So, the morning after Halloween, I wake up. I don't know where I'm at. I know I'm on campus, and I know that there is long, blonde hair, a very specific, wavy, long, blonde hair next to me, and I don't recognize it. When I'm going to tell you I panicked, I absolutely panicked. You know when you've had sex the night before. You know how it feels. Not to mention that neither I nor she were wearing clothes. And this is at the height of any accusation is treated as truth. Because there was part of me that said, well, clearly this woman was attracted to you. If she brought her back to your room, maybe you should find out who she is. But then there was the other part of me of like, I don't remember. What if she doesn't remember? Am I going to get arrested for, I'm not going to say the word, but DR. And I said, because I started college when I was 24, so I was 25 or 26 at the time. I was like, if this goes bad, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail. And then I thought, well, wait, what about DNA? What if this and that? I just thought, Rick, you got to get out of here. So I quietly got up from the bed. I found my clothes stuffed under the blanket somewhere. I clearly had not been wearing protection that night either. I think you know where this is going. I quietly and discreetly put my clothes on. I didn't even bother to put my shoes on. I was worried they'd be too loud. I opened the door. I closed it as silently as I could. I put on my shoes in the hallway and I leave. Her dorm room was on the opposite side of campus of where I lived. And I decided I was going to go to breakfast. Because in my head I was thinking like, well, if anyone sees me out this time in the morning, they just assume I'm going to breakfast, right? So I go to dining hall. And down sits a friend of mine. And she's like, hey, Rick, I didn't know you went to breakfast as early. This is like 6:30 in the morning, right? I wasn't hardly. Unless I had a class at 8, I wasn't up before 7:30, right? Small campus too, so you could wake up at 7:30, have a coffee, a shower, and still make it to class on time. My dorm was directly across from the English building, and that's where my major was, right? And so I sit down with her, and I won't say her name. Let's just call her Nancy for the sake of a name. I said, Nancy, I just woke up in a bedroom where I don't know the person I slept with. And she knew my reputation. She and I actually had sort of had an interest in each other, but then I think my activity sort of turned her off previously, justifiably. I wouldn't want my daughters to ever date someone like who I was back then. And she's like, Rick, you need to make sure that, like, if people start looking at you, you know, you can't deny it, and you can just say it was mutual and consensual. And I told her, I said, Nancy, that's just not the way it works. That is not the way it works. You know, and they scared us in the 90s about all these movies about, like, oh, the girl's drunk, the guy's not as drunk, you know, he gets kicked out of school, he goes to jail. I was on the GI Bill too. You get kicked out of school, you got to pay back your GI Bill. I already spent the money, right? That's how I was going to college. So I just hoped. I would like to say I prayed, but at the time, I would have felt too ashamed to pray, right? I wasn't in the Word. I wasn't who I am now. So anyway, I go about my day. I don't tell anyone else. Nancy, I knew her as a very trustworthy friend. Her a secret was a secret to her. And she knew I wasn't the type of person who would, like, take advantage of someone, right? She knew me well enough. So I go to class. I was hoping to appear completely normal that day. And time went by. And I would look for this girl's specific hair. So you know how, like, some blonde women, like natural blondes, sometimes there's an undertone of their hair that almost makes it appear gray. Like, this is a very distinct color. And I noticed it when I opened the door to leave. I was like, I will recognize that hair color, right? So I start looking for it like an idiot. I should have, you know, I was risking getting caught making eye contact with someone, maybe bringing a repressed memory from a night no one would remember. But it was this weird thing where, like, I had to know. I don't know, like, what if I see something in the newspaper of, like, students are worried, friend, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking that, like, I was going to freaking go to jail, right? Anyhow, I see her. And she was beautiful. I thought, wow, she must have really been hammered if she went to bed with me, you know, because I had that, like, insecurity, low self-esteem at the time. You know, clearly I did, because I was trying to do everything I could to prove what a, you know, manly man I was or whatever, you know. So she's beautiful. And I think, well, maybe if there's some way I can get to know her, whereas if she ever realizes it was me, I can find a way for her to not, I don't know, think she was a victim of something, right? So what I started doing when I saw her walk by on campus is I would just sort of smile at her, you know, like, hey, how's it going? Like, I don't even know how I did it back then, but, like, hey, you're cute, you know, that sort of thing, right? She gorgeous, right? I didn't know her name, though. But eventually I saw someone I knew talking to her, and I figure I would arrange my own meet cute. So this girl, Molly, is talking to her. And I stop by and go, hey, Molly, how's it going? She's like, hey, Rick. And the girl smiles at me. I smile back, but I don't see any, like, recognition, right? So I'm like, you know, so I said, I see you on the campus and I always smile at you. She's like, yeah, I know, I see you too. You know, like, I just was blunt. I said, you're so pretty. I just can't help but look at you and your hair. Like, the way it looks, it's like something pretty awesome, right? I don't remember the exact words. I was fumbling all over my words because on one hand, she is a beauty. On the other hand, I'm worried she's going to put me in jail. And she goes, I feel like we've met before, though. And I said, oh, no, I I'd know if I'd met you before, still trying to like play it like I'm flirting with her, which I kind of was at that point. She tells me her name, which I won't disclose for her privacy, but let's just call her Elmira, because I'm looking at some Elmer's glue, right? I'll call her Elmira. So Molly and Elmira, they know each other. They went to school with each other. And then as we're walking away, Molly goes, "Oh, so this is kind of funny." And this is like December, right? I go, "What's kind of funny?" And I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I'm worried at this point. And she goes, "She actually is 2 months pregnant." Or like a month and a half. This is early December. We're about to go to exams, but this girl knows she's pregnant, right? So we figure she didn't have her period in November, so it was like she's going on her second month of pregnancy. Right? Oh, because like Molly said 2 months, but I'm like, well, it can't be 2 months. It has to be like, a month and a week, or she's in her second month, or yeah. And I'm like, oh, like, when did she get pregnant? And Molly's like, well, that's the thing. She kind of doesn't want to talk about it. I wonder if she's just kind of embarrassed. And I was like, I did not need to hear that. And I know you're thinking like the next thing is Rick got sad because he found out the girl, terminated the baby. No. I knew I had a responsibility. But I still, like, I couldn't come out and say, hey, that was me on Halloween. I couldn't do it. I had to I was so worried about self-preservation, so worried about not going to jail that I couldn't tell the future mother of my child that, by the way, we were bumping uglies one night and I didn't take any precautions and you got pregnant. Right. So I asked Molly for Elmira's information. I told her, listen, there's something about that girl. I like her. And if she's single, like pregnant or not, I would date her. And Molly thought I was like being extra romantic when really I was just friggin' lying to her face, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, what started was one of the greatest romances I've ever had. We started like getting lunch together. I would see her across campus, like the way her face would light up when she saw me. I think there was just this part of her that like she knew we had some sort of connection, right? We kept going back and forth about like, what could I dedicate myself to? I didn't have an income. I was a couple years out of the military. I was trying to get through college to move on that next thing in life. How could I get over the fact that she was pregnant when she met me? All the conversations you have, right? And like, it gets to like 4 months, we're in like February or April or whatever. And spring break comes around, right? And we weren't sleeping together. Not to say that, I didn't want to, but it's like I'd become her confidant. There was like this weird in between romantic thing where like we would hold each other, we would hug. She was 20, I was 25 or 26, right? Clearly she wasn't drinking. I started cleaning up my act because I'm like, if I'm going to go out here and get a job in a year or two, so I can take care of this situation, I've got to really focus on that. I've got to really focus on my studies. And she was going to be home for the summer, and I studied during the summer sessions. And during the summer sessions, I got back to my old ways. I got back to my old habits because I technically didn't have a girlfriend. I had a woman I was in love with, but she wasn't my girlfriend. And then she asked one day if she could come visit. This was June, so she was like 7.5, close to 8 months along. And she comes to visit me. And then finally someone asked me the question that I was dreading they would ask. They go, "Rick, the baby isn't yours, is it?" And how do you answer that? How do you answer that whenever you know you had unprotected intercourse with someone? So I didn't answer. I said, Elmira and I really didn't even become friends until like she was already like a month and a half pregnant. Gets to be late July, right? She's in the vicinity of like needing to give birth. She misses me. She wants me to drive up, or rather down to Williamsburg to go visit her. I'm like, yeah, sure. And at this point, I'd never even met her parents. I'd never even really heard her mention. I had no clue what her plan was. And I thought maybe this is the appropriate environment to go ahead and tell her that I'm pretty sure I'm the father. But I called her, and I needed to tell her first that I loved her. So I called her. And I said, Elmira, I know this isn't something you need to hear as you're about to bring a new life into the world, but I want you to know that I fall in love with you. And whatever happens after this, I'm here with you. She said, Rick, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I think once I've delivered the baby, I can get there. But I have to focus on me right now. It was hard to hear, but she was honest. And she said, I don't want you to come down though. I feel like I'm going to have the baby this weekend. And I'm going to come back up to campus once the next semester starts. And, when I come back, my parents have arranged for me to live somewhere up there and continue my studies. And, they're going to help me out. And, I think it was like her mom or her aunt was going to move up there. Excuse me. So I said, okay. I just was too much of a coward to tell her that, I'd been planning all this stuff in my head. I've been planning, what kind of house we were going to get one day. We were going to get a minivan. If we were going to, what we were going to name the baby, right? I was in love with her. I was determined for this future, right? August comes around. I don't hear anything, right? I see her walking on campus with a baby bundled in her arm. I walk up, see her in that radiant postpartum beauty that women get, where their skin just looks like it's on fire, it glows. You look at your wife after that and you're like, she's never looked so beautiful, right? I walk up to her. She says, hey, Rick, Do you want to see my baby? I said, yeah. I almost said our. I said, I'd like to see your baby. She hands the baby to me. Has curly black hair. Has a sort of wider nose. And that's where I realize this baby is black. And yeah, I know what you're saying, Rick. I mean, I know what you're saying about it now, right? The slut cheated on me.